Ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Baker. Councilor Campbell.
Here.
Councilor Siomo. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Savage-George. Councilor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilor Flynn. Councilor Garrison. Councilor Janey. Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Wu. And Councilor Jacob. Madam
You forgot
President, we
Blaze.
have a quorum.
He's also here. I love it. Thank
big
you,
guy.
Madam Clerk. At this time, I would like all councilors, staff, and colleagues to please rise for the invocation. Councilor Wu will introduce our clergy for the day. And I ask that everyone remain standing after the invocation as she takes us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, everyone. I am honored to introduce Leader Mohammed Hassan from ISBCC, the Islamic Society Boston Cultural Center, right in Roxbury and Washington Street. Mohammed has lived in Boston for over 10 years and has been connected with the Boston Mosque in Roxbury for 7 years. He is one of the leaders and teachers at the mosque, and along with over hundreds of Muslims who pray and learn the teachings at the mosque, are working to make sure that this is not just a space for faith and for prayer, but also for community and everything that goes along with it. So they're working very hard to expand that space and continue to make improvements to it. He's a member of the Clergy Council, a Boston resident, and raising 3 kids in our great city. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohammed Hassan. I'm from Boston Islamic Center, which is located, I correct that, Washington Street in Roxbury. I live in Boston, as she mentioned, the council, over 10 years now. I am a member of Boston Islamic Center. I have 3 kids in Boston, and I like the city. I would like to hear, pray, as one who is live in Boston, I want to add today here to, do the prayer that we ask our Lord to, give us knowledge that's of benefit, good profession and deeds that will be guide for the right path for all of us. So I would say today for that, and I will say thank you, everyone, and everybody here, and I will say thank you again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor.
She's going to do that as the late file.
Oh, perfect. Councilor Wu has a special presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, come on up. So I'm going to hand it over in just a minute so you can hear from leaders of the Boston climate strike, which will be taking place this Friday as part of young people mobilizing around the world this Friday to step up for our climate crisis. So we are joined today by organizers from the Boston Climate Strike: Amalia, Audrey, Adam, Aria, Lucia, Margot, and Emily, as well as leaders from Sunrise Boston: Brady, Adam, and Clara. They will also be here for our council lunch right after, so please stay and we can have more conversation then. But I just want to say I'm so inspired by these leaders and everything that they're doing to make sure that Boston is stepping right up with young people around the world and demanding that we have a future that we can pass on to the next generation, and that a future that not only will be resilient and deal with our climate crisis, but in doing so bring about more sustainable, more prosperous, safer, healthier outcomes for everyone across the board, especially our frontline communities and those who are most vulnerable. So I will hand it over to Amalia.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate this opportunity to come talk to you guys. I'd love to just give like a 2-minute overview of what we're doing, if that's cool. So the striking movement started in Sweden last year with a 16-year-old named Greta, and she started striking in front of Swedish Parliament with a sign that said "School Strike for Climate." And that's really grown and expanded really throughout the world. And there's been some major strikes that have happened. They're all on Fridays. Some people strike every Friday. And they've all been school strikes so far. But this next one on Friday is going to be a general strike. So we're calling on everybody, whether you're 3 or you're 99, to come out and to strike with us to really demand action on the climate. So we're really excited. Our event's happening right outside Boston City Plaza. So we're super excited about that. We're expecting about 10,000 people. We've got some really awesome speakers, including Michelle Wu right here. So we're really excited, and we hope you can all come out. Our main rally is from 11:30 to 1, so we're hoping to hit everybody's lunch breaks. So if you get a chance, just come right outside. Friday. It's this Friday, September 20th.
Hello all, thank you for having us today. Along with our national team, we have specifically hub teams as well, representing the Boston hub today. And the strike itself on Friday is for all allies in the climate fight, in the climate crisis fight. And specifically for Sunrise Boston, I don't know how many of us are going to be there, but I assume like pretty much everybody. And for Sunrise Boston, I will be with you all at the lunch today, hoping to meet many of you, if not all of you, and am happy to answer any questions you may have about us and any sort of things you might like to know. So hope to see you.
Make some room for the rest of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, gentlemen. Good. How you doing? All right?
Thank you, Councillor Wu, for the special presentation.
And Flynn.
Madam Clerk, if you could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councillor Baker is here, Councillor Sabi George is here, Councillor Flynn is here, as well as Councillor McCarthy. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 1328, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept for the benefit of the City of Boston a donation from Suffolk Construction of fitness equipment. The equipment will be donated as part of the Suffolk Construction's ongoing support of Boston officer wellness efforts.
Thank you. Councilor McCarthy, are you speaking on this docket?
I can't.
Docket 1328 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
I don't know, never mind. That's what he
Let me take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, I'd like to go back to docket 1328 at this time and call on the Chair for the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Councilor
Thank you very
McCarthy,
much, Madam President. After clarification, 1328 is used exercise equipment, and I'd like to stand in support of suspension and passage at this time.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor McCarthy, who's Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1328. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1328 has been passed. Moving on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if we could read dockets 1329 through 1333.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 1329, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Peter Schilland as the trustee of the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2021. Docket number 1330, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Gary Saunders as the trustee of the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2021. Docket number 1331, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Greg Galler as a trustee for the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2021. Docket number 1332, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Robert Whitney as a trustee of the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2020. And docket number 1333, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Tim Ian Mitchell as a trustee of the Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dockets 1329 through 1333 will be placed on file. Before I move on, I just want to quickly acknowledge former City Councilor Chuck Turner, who is sitting in the back. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. Thank you. Docket 13. Are you going to say? Okay.
Docket number 1334 has been withdrawn. Docket 1335, notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Angie Leo as the trustee of the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring March 1st, 2021.
Docket 1335 will be placed on file.
Docket number 1336, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, regarding proposed minor modifications to Charlestown's Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-55, with respect to the creation of parcel R30.
Docket 1336 will be placed on file. Moving on to reports of committees.
Docket number 0830, the Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on February 6, 2019, docket number 0830, citizens petition entitled Petition for Renaming Dudley Square to Nubian Square, submits a report recommending the petition ought to pass.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a citizen's petition entitled Petition for Renaming Dudley Square to Nubian Square. It was sponsored by 10 registered voters and referred to the committee back on February the 6th. And being a citizen's petition, it's being placed as a non-binding public advisory question on the ballot for the November 5th, 2019 municipal election to rename Dudley Square to Nubian Square. The language of the proposed question is, Do you support the renaming/changing of Dudley Square to Nubian Square? Question mark. State law pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 35, Section 18A, allows for the placement on the ballot for a non-binding public opinion advisory question by a petition signed by 10 registered voters with the approval of the City Council and the Mayor no later than 35 days before a regular municipal election on November the 5th, 2019. The Board of Election Commissions examined and certified the signatures and deemed them sufficient. The Committee on Government Operations held a public hearing on August the 28th. At the hearing, the administration testified through Jerome Smith, Chief of Civic Engagement, as well as Anita Tavares, Interim Commissioner, as well as Sabino Piemonte, Assistant Registrar of the Elections. They stated that while the administration does not have a position on what the name should be, but they do support the efforts of the Roxbury neighborhood. They referred a memorandum prepared by the city's law department and explained that because of state law, the question must be a citywide and cannot be a district or neighborhood vote. They also explained that the city will closely examine the precincts of Roxbury and give emphasis to those precincts while looking at the data. Members of the Nubian Square Coalition offered testimony in support of the petition and the name change because of the history of discrimination and inequities, and explained that the name of the commercial district should be representative and reflective of the surrounding community. The majority of the public comments were in support of the name change. However, there was public comment supporting changing the name from Dudley, but they did not support the name to be changed to Nubian Square. Overall, testimony urged the City Council to support this petition and have it placed on the ballot to let the people decide. Therefore, as a result, as the Chair of Government Operations, I recommend that docket 0830 ought to pass and go out to the public. And now, through the Chair, turn it over to my colleague from District 7, Kim Janey, if she has any additional comments.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Janey and Blaze, you guys have the floor.
Thank you so much. I have some assistants here helping me out. I first want to thank my colleague and the chair of the committee for his work. I want to thank the coalition for their work and their organizing efforts. And I want to highlight and recognize and thank Jerome Smith for his work in representing the mayor's office and working with the coalition to get this ballot before the voters in November. As you've already heard, a very thorough report. I won't say much, only that I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this resolution. I believe strongly that the residents of Roxbury deserve the opportunity to determine for themselves what they would like to be called. And so this ballot question will give them the opportunity to do just that, to vote on November 5th on whether or not they want to change the name from Dudley to Nubian. As I've stated several times, I remain focused on really trying to change the conditions and make sure that we're doing all we can to improve the life outcomes and opportunities, economic opportunities for people in the district. That being said, I do believe that we should have the opportunity to say for ourselves and vote on November 5th. So I urge all of you to support this so that we can pass it and it can be on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who is chair of the Committee on Government Operations, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0830. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0830 has been passed. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 1185, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept a donation of sculpture from the Boston Properties Prue Center Acquisition, LLC. The sculpture is appraised at $360,000. The sculpture is described as follows: The Quest Eternal by Donald DeLue. The sculpture is approximately 27 feet in height and made of bronze.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. The Boston City Council's Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events had a hearing just yesterday on docket 1185, which would allow the city to receive this gift. It's worth $360,000. It is a statue. The name of the statue is Quest Eternal by Donald DeLue. Many of you may know this statue as the big naked guy in front of the Prudential. And if you're wondering what happened to him, if you missed the hearing, he will be placed in a park in Alston. So I'm glad to know that we know where this statue is and that we can receive this gift. If we pass this, which I will ask for you to do, I recommend that this order ought to pass so that we can receive this gift. There has been a community process, not the most robust. One of the things that I would like to see as a chair, if we are receiving big gifts like this, particularly something as iconic as this statue, that we have a more robust process in terms of determining the location and whether or not we will receive it as a city, and then where we might place it as a city. And I kind of highlighted the process with the FAO Swartz teddy bear and how they determined where that would go next. And it's now down in front of the medical center so that children can see it, which is great. So in the future, I'm hopeful that we will have much more robust discussion, but I think it is great to receive this gift, that there has been a community engagement process with neighbors who were already discussing the redesign of this park. And so I am asking, based on the hearing, based on everything we heard from the administration, I'm asking all of you to pass this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janey. Councillor Janey, who's chair of the Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 1185. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1185 has been passed.
Docket number 1264, message and order approving a home rule petition to the General Court entitled, "An Act to Authorize Boston Redevelopment Authority to Grant Easements for Utility Purposes over a portion of a certain parcel of land located in the city of Boston." Councillor
Flaherty, you have
Thank you,
the floor.
Madam President. The committee held a hearing yesterday. The matter was a home rule petition sponsored by the mayor, which seeks to allow the existing property owners and their tenants to update their utility infrastructure on the property and to continue its current use along Boston's Long Wharf. The home rule petition specifies electric and cable companies who would enter into a contract with the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the BPDA, in relation to this easement, which would allow the utility work to take place subsurface. We started the hearing yesterday with public testimony, particularly the North End residents who raised concerns about the legislation due to requesting a better understanding of what is being proposed through plans and schematics, et cetera, as well as the community process. We also heard from Rich McGinnis, Deputy Director of Climate Change, who spoke on behalf of the administration, explaining that these issues touch on Article 97 of the Commonwealth's Constitution regarding protected open space. We heard from utility companies that had some concerns around sections of the home rule as it pertains to liability. We also heard from former City Councilor Larry DeCara, who's the attorney of record for Capital Properties, who provided a history of the area as well as the buildings, noting that the buildings are over 200 years old. They predate the BRA ownership of Long Wharf, and it's also as its designation as protected park space. He also elaborated on the legislative process, noting that the state's Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs advised that the proposed easements require a bill enacted by both the House and the Senate via a 2/3 vote. And because the topic of discussion is a parcel of land owned by the City of Boston through the BRA, a home rule petition has been filed. It clearly underscores exactly what the problem is. It's why we have to continue to go up there to get liquor license and everything else. This sort of is the crux of how sort of backward some of this stuff is. So the committee also discussed and addressed the identification of the parcel, scope of the project, utility company stated in the legislation, and whether approval was needed from the National Park Service or not, the feasibility of the timeline of the work that needs to be done with respect to the legislative process, and lastly, the community process in the North End. They represented documentation with the BRA as well as the National Park Service, stating that they were respectful of that process. And at the time, given the concerns and understanding the urgency of an 80,000 square foot building that's about to be fully tenanted in the very near future, and don't have a certificate of occupancy because they don't have the sign off on these utilities, sort of time is of the essence. That said, we requested that they go back out and speak to folks from the community, just to give them the full scope of what is necessary, in which case I'm asking that it remain in committee for a short period of time, and through the chair, offer my district colleague an opportunity to weigh in as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Councillor Flaherty for holding a very efficient and fair hearing. I want to also thank Councillor Baker for coming there as well and asking great questions. The issue before us for us yesterday is that there was a lot of things that was missing before even the hearing. One, we found out during the hearing that we didn't even have the complete language of the proposed ordinance. So we got that from one of the cable companies that came in. The other thing that we found out is that no one has any plans. We actually don't know what the plans are and where the utility lines are going to go, why the utility lines are inefficient. So there's a lot of questions still before us. And I think for many of us, or me, myself in particular, there was why didn't they go to the community at all to present that this is something that they want to do? I understand that time is of the essence now, but when they talked about how they went to the National Park Services in June and July, it really does, considering that the community groups have monthly meetings, why they didn't reach out before then. I think the architect was very honest. He just didn't think that he had to do it. And I respect the fact that he was doing his best for his clients. The other thing that was very concerning to us is that they have a sense of urgency that they want to have their tenants in there by October 1st, which they then filed this home rule hoping that we would pass it, get it up to the State House, and possibly pass into both houses with a roll call vote of 2/3 majority by mid-October. So I pushed back on that, saying that's probably not a realistic deadline anyway, so in the time that you're going to have in order to get all of that, why don't you go back out to the community? Councilor Baker suggested, and I thought that was a really great suggestion out of fairness and understanding the urgency, if there was an executive session that one of the community groups could have. One does have an executive session that fell within this time frame. The other one does not. But if they're willing to combine and do that. And I noted that that's a favor of volunteers that regularly meet to adjust their schedule to try and see if these if they can get their utility, this home rule passed, or excuse me, if they can at least present to the community groups. The other concern that I have is, and Councilor Flaherty raised it, but I want to reiterate this, the home rule petition, which was new to me, is already naming the future clients and the cable companies of who automatically get to have the bid for the lines. And when we asked Councilor Dakar, or former Councilor Dakar, excuse me, he mentioned that they were the only ones who seemed to express interest. So I thought that was interesting. They were legislating what future contracts are going to happen with the city or with the BRA in a home rule petition. No other cable company gets to bid, and that was a question that I still have. But most importantly, it's about the process. And when people don't see the process working fairly for community or for utility groups or for large companies, then they question whether the government is working for them. Every other developer, every other abutter, every other person who wants to do anything in this community has to go to both of the community groups, and this would be granting an exception to that. And so I have some concerns. I understand that they're facing some urgency. I do appreciate that it's still staying in committee, and until I see a community process that supports this, I don't know that I can.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. At this time, docket 1264 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 1337, Councilor Campbell offered the following: an ordinance establishing the office of Inspector General within the City of Boston.
Chair recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. This is the official ordinance, draft ordinance to introduce the idea of the Inspector General. I think many have seen my sort of releases related to this idea. I'm excited to have a conversation with each and every one of you. I think we all agree that Boston deserves a city government that is free of corruption, waste, grounded in transparency, and accountable to the people. And I don't know about many of you, but I've received a lot of calls with respect to development projects, the ZBA, also concerns around the conviction of a former city employee related to bribery. But I want to be clear that this idea related to an Inspector General has, while it does pertain to that, it's not rooted in being responsive or reactive to that. It's an idea that I heard at a council president's conference some time ago. Right now in 34 states across the country, there's an Inspector General, whether at the state level, the county level, or the municipal level. And in a couple of the cities, including Baltimore, for example, Chicago, New York, the role of the Inspector General is to ensure that there is a government that is free of corruption, grounded in transparency, and of course accountable to the residents. So for me, this role is not just to say that we have a government that is loaded with corruption. That's not the case. I think we all would agree with that. While there are some concerns and some incidents that have occurred recently that we should all be concerned about, Boston is different than other cities in terms of how our government functions. So I just want to make that clear that for me, this position is about bringing in someone who can proactively, not reactively, look at our departments, how they spend their money, look at our policies and practices that are supposed to ensure transparency and accountability, as well as making sure that we have good governance and good management, and that those policies that are on paper and are well-intentioned actually show up in reality with actually having good governance and accountability and transparency for our residents. It's also about ensuring that we don't have waste, for example. I know through many budget hearings we have talked about concerns related to some departments that spend money, and sometimes we wonder what that money is being spent on, how is it being used. So this position or office is a position in an office that I think can begin to proactively look at where we can do better with respect to our financial management to ensure we don't have waste, where we can do better with respect to our policies and practices that are supposed to ensure transparency and accountability, and where we can do better in terms of management. And, you know, our city employees do a lot every single day. I often say that our city employees are overworked and underpaid. It can be really challenging to take the time that is necessary to ensure that we are being fair in our processes, that our processes are equitable for residents in the city of Boston. So this office could proactively work with those employees, work with those departments to ensure that they are actually doing their jobs really well. The concept in the ordinance, you will see, it's just that, it's a draft. I look forward to conversations not only with my colleagues, with the administration, who I'm already in contact with, as well as residents in the city of Boston, to make this as perfect as possible. In the ordinance, in the draft, I call for an inspector general that is appointed by an advisory board. In other cities, sometimes it's appointed by the mayor, sometimes it's appointed by the council, sometimes it's a combination or another commission. I thought it would be great to have a combination where the mayor is involved, the council is involved, as well as the community, so that it truly feels like this person is independent from the mayor's office as well as the council. So in the ordinance, there is language around an advisory board of 7 members, one appointment by the mayor, one by the council president, one by the chair of Ways and Means, also pulling in our city auditor as well as corporation counsel for an appointment, and then having a public application process, probably that could be similar to how we did the CPA, to pull folks from the city of Boston to also play a role in appointing an inspector general. The term of the inspector general says 5 years. That is intentional. It is supposed to go past the term of the mayor, with the hopes that this person will not be accountable, of course, to the mayor or the council, but really to the community, and can do their work without political interference. The IG, it also says, should not be removed for any reason but for cause. It also talks about the role that the council will play in ensuring that that can happen, or that happens. The ordinance also speaks to the budget for this office, and this is a place I've heard and gotten different responses. We could have it within the city of Boston's budget with a minimum percentage from each department contributing to this office, or we could look to do something different where it's actually not within the city of Boston's budget. I've gotten some creative ideas from community with respect to that, so that this office is truly independent, even in its financial means. So there is a lot of ideas floating already since releasing the ordinance that I'm open to. But the goal of this office, of this person who was ultimately selected to take on this role, is to ensure that we as electeds not only are delivering good governance to the residents in the city of Boston, but that we're allowing them tools and mechanisms to hold us all accountable in the work that we do every day. And to do it in such a way that it truly is independent, that is accountable to residents. And I'll give you one example. Many of the recent concerns related to the ZBA, we've gone to outside legal counsel And that decision is not made by counselors. It's not made by the public. It's an investigation that is happening within the walls of a law firm. They are not required to give updates to this body or to the residents. These are costly transactions. I know because I used to be in the private sector for a little bit, and it's expensive to run an investigation out of a law firm. So we may, in fact, save money by appointing an office that, one, can run a public investigation, that can also make sure that residents and the council and others are getting up-to-date feedback around investigations that we conduct. This office could also decide the criteria to use when deciding whether or not to even hire an outside law firm or bring in law enforcement. So there's a lot that we could do in this office to ensure that this city and the residents in it get the best government and the government they deserve, and do it in such a way that it is transparent, accountable, efficient, effective, and most importantly, probably saves residents money, which I think we all care about as fiscal stewards of the city of Boston. And lastly, it's a draft. So I encourage folks to not only reach out to me, as they already have been, with their suggestions on how to make this work, the same with my colleagues as well as the administration. And I wanted to make it crystal clear that while we are seeing issues in the news that are concerning, this does not have anything to do with the extortion case, for example, that we were talking about in terms of 2 employees. This is separate and apart from that. Don't get me wrong, the bribery conviction, I think, shocked us all, and is something that is extremely concerning. Bribery is corruption, but I don't think that we should equate that with an administration or a government that is corrupt. But it gives us an opportunity to learn from our mistakes, to look to do better, and to put forth ideas and concepts that can ensure that we don't get these incidents going forward. And that's what this conversation should be about. I know we often want to pit electeds against each other. That's not what this is. This is an opportunity to work together to create a position in an office that can work in preventative maintenance to ensure that we all are great at what we do. And lastly, I just want to give a plug and a thanks to Michelle from Central Staff for working with me on this ordinance and going through all the various ordinances from the various municipalities across the country, and look forward to the feedback of my colleagues and having a timely hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, and I wanted to commend the maker, honestly. I think this is an excellent piece of legislation, so please certainly add my name to it. I also wanted to note that myself, Councilor Zakam, and also Councilor Campbell, we had previously introduced a hearing order on looking at creating an independent commission to do investigations, and to have subpoena powers and to actually delve into the long systemic biases and concerns in the city of Boston. So I think these are not contrary conversations. They might even be a combined conversation if we have that hearing already planned, or to look at how we can make sure that we're truly looking at ways in which we are holding ourselves accountable. I think I want to commend the mayor for his already stepping forward on parts of the systemic concerns when it comes to gender and race by helping to really push for the HRC, the Human Rights Commission, to get started again. That also has subpoena powers. I think this is dealing with the other end of other things that we want to investigate, including corruption. This is an excellent piece of an ordinance, so I want to thank you for that. I do want to make sure that when we're discussing this, however, we're also making sure that we, and by the way, I've already had people apply for the job. So it's been received very well by folks in my district. But I want to be clear that to make sure that it's not politically motivated and that people aren't burdened by false accusations which result in them emptying out their inbox and having to deal with harassment, we need to make sure that we have a neutral and accessible access point. Is it by complaint that folks are coming in? What's the jurisdiction? Is it just for City of Boston folks to talk about the City of Boston? Is it anyone from around the country who could file a concern or complaint and basically hold this person, this office, and our budget, hostage while they investigate for years and years and years and years? And there's some people who will look forward to being able to file a huge amount of complaints and concerns. So what's the access point? What's the jurisdiction? I do appreciate the fact that there's a term limit. I don't think that you had mentioned that, but it does assure that a person will do about 10 years, and it doesn't matter who the administration is. I think that's excellent. I do think that we need to, and I appreciate the fact that actually the way in which the person can be removed is by 2/3 of the vote of the city council, though the councilor, the mayor, or anyone can prompt that. But I do want to delve into the for cause if there's other reasons that might warrant this person being removed. I just also think it's really key, not only in looking at how we're going to fund this, but where we're going to hold it. Is it going to be here on the 5th floor in this building? Is it going to be someplace else where there's a true independence? And how do we make sure that we don't have conflicts of interest? So I think this is a great conversation. I'm excited to be a part of it. I don't think this has anything to do with any case pending or any of the other issues. I think we need it, period. And this is about us being good government and not being afraid of being held accountable. So I want to thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to working with you.
Please add Councilor Edwards' names. Councilor Garrison.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to an ordinance establishing an office of Inspector General in the city of Boston. We already have an IG Inspector General for federal government. We have an IG Inspector General for state government. Why do we need an IG for municipal government? If we have this money, we can take this money and give taxpayers a tax break. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Although I can understand what the lead sponsor is looking to do here, I do think that as someone that's been in the city for 30-plus years dealing with city departments, I think it does infer that there's a lot of people in the city that are dirty or on the take, whatever. Don't forget, I think it's 99.9% of the people here come in, they do their work, they work hard. I just think that an office like this could really grind the daily workings of the city to a halt, because now your rank and file is going to say, I don't know what I can do. I have someone looking over my shoulder all day. Not necessarily totally opposed to it, but looking forward to the hearing. Will sign on, but I'm coming from a point where I'm not sure that we need this. It could be redundant. The previous council talked about we have an IG at the state level. And even how do we pay for this? You know, this is an office. It's going to cost at least $1 million. At least $1 million. And we'll get back to the print department. We were closed over $1 million. Hate to bring it up again, Mr. President. $1 million, 30 people out of work, no longer doing printing for the city, manufacturing jobs. So now we're going to basically have someone come in here to hover over the people that are at their desks, making sure that their work. I'm not totally on board, but I would like to sign on to the hearing order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Please add Councilor Baker's name. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I rise to commend the Maker and the Council President for her leadership. I've read through this. I think there's a lot of solid, smart, well put together sort of potential in place here, and support everything obviously we can do to increase transparency and openness, and ask that my name be added, and look forward to participating in the hearing shortly.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Please add Councilor O'Malley's name. Councilor Campbell.
You can go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Janey.
So I rise to commend the Maker. Thank you so much for putting this forward. I think as a city, and this is not to point fingers about any individuals or to somehow create an environment where people would feel like they couldn't do their work. I think what it does is it helps us do government better. It helps us make sure that we have things in place that will ensure accountability and transparency. So please add my name. Thank you.
Please add Councilor Janey's name. Councilor Campbell.
Just wanted to clarify a couple of points. So thank you, everyone, for chiming in already. Yes, we do have a state IG, and I want to acknowledge that explicitly, and thought about that, looked at the role of that office. And frankly, that position is so far removed that I don't find it to be effective when it comes to our dealing specifically in the city of Boston. And even looked at other states where there is someone at the state level as well as the city level that work hand in hand and definitely in partnership. But when you're close to the ground, you're more effective in doing the work. And I'll give you one example. I think in some of the recent incidents that we've seen, there have been some folks who reached out to the state IG's office, and from my understanding, they're going nowhere near some of this stuff, which isn't necessarily helpful. And I also want to recognize we have a finance commission and other commissions as well that do great work, which I think is a little bit more limited than some of the broader scope that I envision for this particular office. The finance commission, for example, that does good work is appointed by the governor, also a bit removed from local government. And to Councilor Baker's point, it's an important one that I wanted to go back to, because we do have city employees that are working tirelessly every single day. And like I said, most of whom not only work hard, but are underpaid, doing the work, and have been before I even was born. And I want to applaud their work. At the same time, what I've noticed, and I've had some discussions with some city employees, is some of our departments will hire an external auditor to come in to make sure their practices are great. Some will go out and bring in a consultant to help them be more accountable or transparent in their processes, in their work. They don't necessarily have someone on staff that helps them to do that. So I think there's a cost savings if we bring that back. I absolutely know there's a cost savings if we're not always doing external investigations through private law firms. So a part of this conversation will absolutely be about the money, but I like to think that we might actually save money by creating this office to work in partnership, hand in hand with our residents, not to be lurking over the shoulder of someone or to see their role as sort of, let me go out and get you. That's not what this should be designed to be. It should be someone who is working in partnership with every single employee to ensure that we're all delivering good governance and helping us do that with special skill sets that this person may have and resources and other things, and then who can consistently and proactively look at that across the board. I just wanted to add that because there are some concerns and calls that I've gotten from even city employees who love the idea but had thoughts. And I want to stress the value of the people that show up in this building and others to do the work for this city every single day, that should not be undermining this conversation, nor should we also make this about some corrupt government, because that's not what we have. It really is about good governance, transparency, being proactive, and being the best electeds and public servants we can be. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Flynn.
Please add my name.
Please add Councilor Flynn's name, Councilor Zachem, Councilor Wu, Councilor Janey, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor McCarthy, and the chair, please. Please place docket 1337 in the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 1338, Councilor Flynn offered the following order for a hearing to discuss pedestrian crossing signals, traffic calming, and Vision Zero.
Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I add Councilor Janey as an original co-sponsor?
Any objections to adding Councilor Janey? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Janey as an original co-sponsor. Thank you. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I called for this hearing because pedestrian safety is an important, significant issue, not just in my district, but throughout the city. I also added Councilor Janey. She's done a lot of great work on the pedestrian safety-related issues, as have all my colleagues, as well as the city administration. Vision Zero is critical for our city. We want to make sure our roads, our streets, our sidewalks are as safe as they possibly can for pedestrians, especially for our seniors, for persons with disabilities. We see a lot of parents walking their children to school in the morning. We want to make sure that they can arrive at school as safe as we can. We also had several tragedies over the last year in my district and throughout the city. Some of it had to do with speeding, some of it had to do with infrastructure improvements that need to be made, some of it has to do with signaling. I've worked with Councilor Baker trying to reduce the speed limit from 25 to 20, and I want to say thank you to Councilor Baker for his work. We are making improvements where 20 miles an hour would be appropriate, especially in and around schools, in and around elderly developments as well. I represent a lot of constituents that are also seniors, as I mentioned before, And at times, when they're crossing the street in the morning to get the newspaper or get milk or bread, they don't feel confident or safe because the cars are speeding so fast. Yesterday morning, I was at the Leather District with Sophia from my office with Sergeant Moy, and we were on Lincoln Street, and people are coming off the highway, going up Lincoln Street, heading towards the downtown area, and they're coming off that highway at a high rate of speed, sometimes 50 miles an hour. And that's a residential neighborhood, the Leather District connecting Chinatown. So pedestrian safety is probably the issue that I've focused most on. It's critical for improving pedestrian safety for everybody. Vision Zero is critical. I came out with a 12-point plan last year. Some of it was implemented by the city administration, so I want to thank them for it. But we need to do more. We need more speed humps. We need more stop signs. We need to slow the traffic down. We need to bump out sidewalks. We need to put the road on a diet. We need more beacon lights, flashing lights, making sure that our signals are working appropriately. I don't like the fact that at times there are signals across the city where a pedestrian can walk across the street in a crosswalk and the vehicle can go at the same time. I want to ask our City Department of Transportation, I already have asked them and I'm working with them on it, to take a closer look at that scenario. It's unsafe in my opinion, and I want every intersection across our city to at least be checked to see if that scenario is taking place, but to make improvements based on the recommendations and advice of people that have far more experience on it than I do. We also have a lot of Uber, Lyft across our city. Where are they picking people up? Where are they dropping them off? Do we have a safe place for our residents to get into these vehicles, to get out of the vehicles? And I want to work closely with the city administration, as I have been over the last 2 years, as my council colleagues have been for many years, in improving the safety of everybody in our city. Again, this is a critical issue. I focus on this every day, as do my council colleagues. Last night we had, unfortunately, another accident on L Street in South Boston that I want to work closely again with the city to reduce that speed on our neighborhoods of Boston. With that, Madam President, I want to thank you for your time, and again want to say thank you to Councilor Janey for her tremendous leadership on this issue for many years. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Janey? Councillor Janey and Blaze, you have the floor. I love it.
So much, Madam President. I want to begin by just thanking my good friend and colleague, Councillor Flynn, for his leadership on this issue. He is always speaking up for seniors in our city, for young people, children, and those with disabilities on this issue. And you've already heard him say that he's looking to examine the speed limit. We had a hearing last year, I believe, on that. So I want to thank you for your leadership and thank you for allowing me to join with you. This is a really important issue. It affects many of us in this city, particularly as our neighborhoods are becoming more and more dense through development, as more construction is underway. There is an opportunity for us to put things in place. I also want to acknowledge Chief Osgood for his good work and his team. They've been working closely, certainly with my office, as I'm sure with many of you, around different things in our districts. One thing I would highlight in particular was a crosswalk that I was able to get for some seniors in my district on Rockland Street. The seniors told me that they had been working on this for 7 to 10 years, which I think is ludicrous, that it would take something so long to get a crosswalk. And it took a long time, even in our office, just to kind of cut through the red tape and the bureaucracy here in the building, but we were able to get the crosswalk for the seniors. And what we realized right away, that there's still a visibility issue for seniors trying to cross at this particular intersection where Rockland meets Dale Street. And so there's more work to be done, working with city departments and with residents to ensure that that crosswalk in that corner, that intersection, is much more safe for them. And that's just one example where we need to do much more to cut through red tape and make sure that things are moving more smoothly through this city, and that we are bringing in the voices of residents as we have these conversations. It is important that we all share our roads. We often talk about transportation in our system and our roads through a car lens, and it's important that we understand that there are many other people who travel on our streets who are not in cars, but they are walking or they're taking a bus, and we need to make sure that our streets and sidewalks are safe for them. So again, I thank you for your leadership, Councilor Flynn, and I look forward to continuing our good work on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank Council Flynn for his tireless work here. We've been asking for, through this Vision Zero and through the legislation that lowered the speed limit, we've been asking for speed lumps, bumps, humps, raised sidewalks, something, anything we can get. Hopefully we can get some of these. Just to make a point, Council used the word accident. The word police might be after. You're supposed to use crash, I guess. And with that crosswalk you got there the other day, that new IG might have an issue with you jumping the line on that. So just a couple points I wanted to make there. You know, if you called in a favor, that might be a problem with this new IG. I just want to let you know. Thank you.
Add your name?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilor Baker. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Baker. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Please say my name, Madam President.
Please also add Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Garrison, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as well as the Chair. Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and please add my name. I just rise to support Councilor Flynn and Councilor Janey's hearing order. I think that it's really important. And to Councilor Baker's point about, in my ideal city, we have raised crosswalks, especially in front of our playgrounds, elementary schools, and senior centers. I think as we raise up little ones and those who we all will lose a few inches, I think, as we age, but if we're in wheelchairs or using walkers or walking a little bit slowly, it's important to raise us up. I think it's a big part of why so many of us, including myself, advocated for establishing or refunding the crash data analyst through BPD and BTD. That position I don't think has been filled yet. It's critical to get to that point and include that data in this conversation, but we don't need to study this issue anymore. We need to make some significant improvements across the city to create a safer city for all of our residents, both pedestrian, bicyclists, and vehicle drivers alike. It's important. Let's get to it. Let's stop studying it. Let's put some more paint down. Let's raise some crosswalks and put the protections in place that our residents need. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Flynn and Janey, for this. The one thing that is happening around, to dovetail off of what my good friend from Dorchester just stated, is the reality that we've had enough studies. We know how to fix things. The biggest issue in a district office is people going too fast or people not going at all. There's got to be a happy medium there. And the reality is, when I was in Public Works, we were sued by the federal government for ADA compliant on sidewalks. We had to come up with a plan. We came up with a plan. It was a $10 million over a 7-year plan, something like that. And we're fixing all the pedestrian ramps throughout the city. You see them all getting redone. We shouldn't have to be forced by the federal government to do this. This is going to take money. I won't be here next budget season. Having said that, it's going to take money. And it comes to the point where we really need a full plan. We've been talking about speed humps for years, not speed bumps or not speed strips, speed humps. We've been talking about the reflective radar signs. I have a couple in High Park, in Matapan, and Rosendale. I'd love to have more. I've noticed that they are they're successful. I've been behind people on Austin Street who see they're going 42 miles an hour, who've tapped the brakes and slowed down. We know for a fact they work, but it's going to take some money. So I urge the City Council, next year's budget season, I've sat on that side of the table when the City Council would ask, or actually Mark Siomo would ask, hey, do you have enough money in your department? And I've sat there and said, yes, we do. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, we don't. We need honest answers. We need to get to it. So as we go forward with this, I look forward to the hearing and bring a little bit of my history along with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, I don't think I stated this. If you could add Councilor Sabi George as well. I think I got everyone. Did I get Councilor Edwards? I did. Awesome. Thank you, guys. At this time, docket 1338 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to late files, I'm informed by the clerk that there is one late file, which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. Hearing and seeing no objection, the late file is so added. Madam Clerk, if you could read it into the record.
Thank you, Madam President. Offered by City Councilor Anissa Asabi George in the City Council. Resolution recognizing September 15th through the 21st, 2019 as National Forensic Science Week. Whereas forensic science plays a vital role in our criminal justice system and carrying out criminal investigations across the nation. Whereas this year marks the 7th Annual National Forensic Science Week, a national observance celebrating the significant contribution of forensic science practitioners. Therefore be it resolved that the Boston City Council celebrates all of its forensic science practitioners and recognizes the week of September 15th to the 21st, 2019 as National Forensic Science Week of the City of Boston, filed September 18th, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I just want to speak to this resolution because I think it's important to recognize the men and women, both uniformed and civilian employees that are doing the work of our Boston Police Crime Lab in particular. They are understaffed, under-resourced, well over capacity in the work that they need to do, which is very important, not just for justice, but for really solving the problems or the symptoms of crime, not the symptoms, but when crime happens in the city, our residents deserve a quick response. When there is, unfortunately, a rape in our city, our residents deserve a quick response. And we've had some significant improvements to crime legislation or through crime legislation at the state level that has put a lot of pressure on our crime lab here in the city of Boston. And so for this week, as it's the week that we're recognizing officially Forensic Science Week, those that are doing this work, I want to applaud them and thank them, but also recognize the pressures that they are under to get through their work quickly and do it on behalf of the residents in the city of Boston. And I want to recognize that they are doing it with not all the resources that they need to make sure that they're doing their piece to protect our residents. So for the science and for the labor that happens in that crime lab, I want to recognize their work today because it's often unnoticed because it's the work that happens after there's been an unfortunate incident in our city. Thank you for that. I request suspension and passage of this resolution so I can send it over to that department recognizing their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. At this time, Councilor Sabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of the late file matter. All those, actually, before I do that, does anyone want to add their name to the resolution? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, and Councilor Wu, as well as the Chair. At this time, Councilor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of the late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The late file is adopted. Anybody wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Moving right along. I'm informed by the clerk that there are two late file matters to be added to the consent agenda, which in the absence of objection will be added. Hearing and seeing no objection, the two late files are so added. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda. Any announcements? Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I rise to share sad news. I'm sure you've heard that our community, our city, has lost a great man, a giant, and Reverend Michael E. Haines. People know that Reverend Haines, lifelong resident of Roxbury, his beloved neighborhood, that he represented well, 3 terms in the legislature as a state rep, but more than that, 40 years as the pastor and faith leader at 12th Baptist Church, which is my family's home church. Reverend Haines means so much to me personally, as well as he has seen generations of Janie's come through 12th Baptist Church that he himself christened or baptized, married, and eulogized. But more than just my family, what he has meant to the Roxbury community and what he has meant to this city in terms of the work that he has done at the church, to expand the church and its reach in terms of services and ministry to those in our community. He has served in an unofficial capacity as the dean of all ministers. He is recognized as the dean, in the Black Ministerial Alliance. Just a great man. He is also a neighbor, so he lives around the corner from me, and his family is certainly mourning, but we celebrate a great life that he has lived and the legacy that he has left us, and we hope to build on that. And so I just ask all of my colleagues, I also want to inform folks, if people don't know, that the wake is this Friday from 4 to 8. You'll have an opportunity to pay respects then, and the funeral services are Saturday at 11 at 12th Baptist Church. But certainly keep the Haines family in your prayers. You may have caught a wonderful interview that Reverend Haines just did in the banner. It was just the week before he died, on him and his brother Roy, who is a famous jazz musician. If you haven't seen it, please take a look. There have been some great articles as well in the Globe. But keep the family in prayer. Keep our beloved Roxbury in your prayer and our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Yes, quickly, I just want to rise and wish somebody a happy birthday. Somebody on this floor is turning 40 on Friday. It's not Mark Siomo. So happy birthday to a good friend and District 6 colleague, Matt O'Malley.
He looks happy about that. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I had the opportunity with several of my colleagues, Council McCarthy, Council Anissa Sabi George, Council Baker, just a few minutes ago, an hour ago rather, to be at the City Hall Plaza in recognition of POW MIA Day that took place, and it's a day where we remember and think about the men and women serving our country, that their remains have never been found or their whereabouts have never been found. And so on this day, we think about them. We work closely with our state and federal governments as well to make sure that anyone that served our country and their remains are unaccounted for, that we continue to work closely to try to bring their remains back. I had an opportunity to speak to Congressman Lynch over the weekend in South Boston at the rededication of the South Boston Vietnam Veterans Memorial with Councilor Flaherty and with Mayor Walsh as well. We were talking about this issue and how important it is for our city, but more importantly, how important it is for our military families that have lost someone. That pain never ends, even after 30, 40, 50 years. They keep thinking about their loved one, not just on Memorial Day, but every day. So there's a lot of these military families that paid the supreme sacrifice for our country, but we also want to make sure that our government continues to do everything it can to bring their remains home. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor Flynn. Any other announcements? I'll just quickly remind folks that we have another racial equity training tomorrow. And then also this Sunday, if you are around, come by, come through, bring your family, bring your friends. I'm hosting, along with Ron Savage, who's the Dean of Performance at Berklee College of Music, I hope to be the first annual Matapan Jazz and Unity Festival. It should be fun. It is highlighting Matapan and all the great things about Matapan that often get lost in the media and the news. It is a free event. It starts at 1, but it goes till 5. It is behind the Foley Residences, which is at 249 River Street in Matapan. It'd be great to see all of you. I also want to give a plug to Councilor McCarthy and other Matapan electeds in particular that also are sponsoring and being a part of this event. Thank you very much. It should be fun. It's a great way to celebrate a neighborhood that often, frankly, just doesn't often get celebrated for all the great things that exist there. And we're also going to be highlighting some of the stories of our seniors that live there through this oral history project. So if you're around, come by, but thank you guys for allowing me to say that. At this time, I would like all guests and staff and colleagues to please rise as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilors Flaherty and Flynn, Kevin Martin Sr. and Robert Tierney. For Councilors Flaherty, Flynn, and Baker, Jean Bulger Holland. And for the entire City Council, Reverend Michael Haines. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, the chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet in this chamber on Wednesday, September 25th at 12 noon at Boston City Hall. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.